Hi, I'm Ella, and this is Ella Podcasts. Have you ever had a friend or relative stop talking to you because of your difference in political opinions? Or have you been unfriended on social media because you have shared your political views? How common is it today for politics to strain or end friendships? Whether you lean to the left or right, are liberal or conservative, a Democrat or Republican, today we're discussing why politics fiercely divides and how to retain friendships with people supporting the other side. Surely we shouldn't be losing friendships over a difference in opinion, which is only embracing the idea of freedom of speech. I'm joined today by Dr. Jonathan Marshall. He's a top psychologist and a former professor. He's a Stanford and Harvard University graduate, and he offers perspective and practical advice on this matter. We also have Simon J. Littlewood with us today. He's a journalist, a business advisor, and an Oxford University graduate. He is widely known for his business and economics commentary on the BBC World Service, and he's the author of the best-selling business book, Let the Cash Flow. He's a regular contributor to Global Finance in New York and the founder of the business networking group, the Raffles Crew. Welcome, Simon. We're also joined by Samir Kothari. He's a fund manager for an Italian investment fund. And he hails from Texas. He has a Master's of Science from the University of Houston and comes from proud Indian heritage. Clarify the globally understood definitions of liberal versus conservative.
That's a very ambitious assertion, so
in
we can
half
get
a
on the
minute.
same page. I think, first of all, I'm going to attempt a definition, but it has to be said that what constitutes a liberal or a conservative tends to depend on where you sit on the spectrum of liberal or conservative. My views haven't changed much, but the way I'm perceived is completely different. So a conservative is somebody who believes that we inherit important values, that they should be valued and conserved, and that the value of those inherited values it is evident in the success of our culture. That the way that society grows is through the family, that individuals should own their own decisions and their own financial future, and that the role of the state should be minimal. The state should only be involved to the extent that it is absolutely necessary. The modern liberal, and I use the word modern advisedly, believes that society is riven with inequities and that the state needs to take an active role in righting all those perceived wrongs, including wrongs from hundreds of years ago that apparently have been inherited, but certainly including wrongs of gender, wrongs of race, and all those sorts of things. And it prescribes a very significant role for the government in the lives of the individuals. That's my perception of what those two different things mean.
Okay. Has anyone got anything to add to that?
There's been some interesting research looking at psychologically how they're different. So one is that liberals tend to put more emphasis on minorities and on the idea of fairness through equality, whereas conservatives tend to put more emphasis on the unit, the culture, the tribe, the family, authority, obedience, and purity is also more of an emphasis for conservatives than it is for liberals in sort of political psychology. They've also found things that as early as 1 month old that we can predict with some level of accuracy the political leanings that person will have at 18 or 26.
That's incredible. How
1 month old.
How do they establish
Yeah,
that?
exactly. Yeah. So if your parents are more keen on obedience and authority in the household, if their view is a child should obey and respect authority, that child is more likely to be conservative than parents who believe that a child should have its own view and should be free to oppose. And there are a few of these fascinating correlates, including genetics is one of the strongest correlates. So in twin studies where identical twins separated at birth are later on found that they are very correlates. About 40% is the current, somewhere between 30 and 60%, but 40% is the most typical figure used, likely to share the same political beliefs or similar political beliefs. So there are a lot of factors involved that get into this. But yeah, in terms of political psychology, the emphasis on the nurturing mother that would be something that liberals tend to have, whereas the authoritarian father is more of an iconic figure for conservatives.
That's incredibly interesting. Just on that subject, Simon, I mean, do you follow the same
I'm guessing you're
politics?
a liberal from that analysis.
No, I'm staying out of that debate.
Okay.
Do you follow the same politics as your parents, just out of interest?
Well, my father died a long time ago. He probably would have been an arch Tory. My family in general has been conservative. I've got several Tory MPs in my family, including a cabinet minister.
Oh, wow.
But if people change their minds, I mean, that would be one of my objections to your analysis. I've been very different politically throughout my life. And when I was at university, my choices were more to do with how easy it was to get laid, depending on the politics of the woman. And I can give you that. I can give you that analysis if you want, but it's probably not much use anymore.
Did it work?
50 years. Well, once I'd honed my strategy, I actually ended up being an anarcho-syndicalist, so an anarchist, because the women in the anarchist movement were determined to demonstrate that they had no limits to their behaviour, and I thought at the time that struck me as quite appealing as a repressed Catholic. But I ended up like a Tory. You know, who was it who said, I durst not be a Tory when young for fear of being a liberal when old. It befits mature people to be somewhat conservative in their views. I believe.
In terms of my parenting, my father was very left-wing, joined the Labour Party, our local Labour Party, and he got thrown out for being too left-wing. And I always say he was a virtual communist because he did believe everybody should share their wealth and help each other out. And it was very angry about the high net worth people and wanting to share what they have. And he was quite hilarious. Even at an early age, I realized there was something wrong with him because the guys who lived next door to us voted Conservative. And one year they put Vote Tory or something on their window. And my father went absolutely bonkers with them. And as a little kid, I watched him having a physical fight on our driveway just because the neighbour voted Tory. And that was the kind of household I was raised in. And my grandmother was always saying to me, if you're not a communist sometime in your life, you don't have a heart. And what I never realized is there was another part of that sentence, which was, if you're still a communist by 40, you haven't got a brain.
Yeah.
But they never talked about that side of things. So it was a very red upbringing. And it did take me a while to realize, actually, I'm not a red at all. I'm a conservative. And, it's interesting to see how sometimes family dynamics means you go to the other extreme. You're completely the opposite politically.
I think to break it down, I mean, it's very simple, right? The conservatives are more fact-based. The left, people on the left are more narrative-based, right? And you can see that. So on our topic about workplace politics, I've been a sort of on the receiving end of a lot of this, right? The narrative-based sort of angle, right? Where in 2016, I'll never forget, I probably lost 80% of my friends only because I thought that, Hillary was a sort of this annoying ranting granny who was never going to be president. And I thought that was a fact-based thing, right? And people lost their minds. They're like, well, the polls, this and that. I said, she's not going to win. So, you get kind of excommunicated even within a social environment, right? Because people are so driven by this sort of narrative, right? And then there's actual institutional level canceling, right? Like I was canceled for like 3 months by Facebook, or it was at Instagram or something. And my only crime was, so Oprah Winfrey was on for interviewing, I think, Obama or whatever. And I said, like, your hairstyle looks like, she looks like a Cocker Spaniel. I mean, if you're a billionaire, I mean, you could, you have Hollywood level stylists, and they went with this look. Well, apparently, the nerds at Facebook thought that was a hanging offense, and I was off the platform for like 3 months.
Did she change her hairdo?
After that, yes. I think I was not the only one that mentioned that, right? Most likely,
Cocker
right?
Spaniel look again.
Yeah. Well, she's disappeared totally now because of the scandals and stuff. But and I'm always amazed at how people, particularly that are left leaning, have almost regurgitate the same talking points in the U.S., for example, that the DNC pushes out through the legacy media outlets, right? It's just amazing talking about immigrants, for example, not being able to differentiate illegal versus legal, for example.
And it's not just the US. You find that everyone's got a view on it. So, you know, obviously we are sitting in Singapore and, you know, a lot of Trump's all the fervor about the wall going up. The amount of people who kept saying to me, oh, it's terrible what he's doing to those poor people. And I would say, but we're living in a country that has 0 migrants.
What happens to illegal immigrants who come into Singapore?
We don't let anyone in unless you've got a degree and you've got a job lined up and you've got something to offer. So how can you live in this utopian place where you don't have those issues and expect other countries to just open up the floodgates and say everyone's welcome? We don't care if you're a serial rapist or you know you've got HIV and you're spreading it around as far as you can. Welcome, and here's your free apartment and your social security.
There's a pathological level of groupthink on the left, which is, and people don't deviate from that primarily because they want to be invited to the parties. They don't want to be ostracized at work or socially, so they just continue this cycle of stupidity in terms of you know, and they may be great. They may be a great fixed income trader, but you know, logic and common sense, forget it, right? You know, outside of their narrow focus of their job. So you've got people, and you see this in the U.S. with the tech bros, right? Essentially hanging on to. That's changed obviously with some of them because you know they've moved closer to Trump and they realize that. You know, that they're at the end of the day, they've got to run their businesses, right? Particularly on the AI side and robotics and all that. But it's just mind-boggling where, you know, we'll be in fundraising meetings with institutional investors and they'll go off on a tangent on something and you've got to reel them in like, okay, guys, enough, stop. Okay, let's focus on, you know, what we're here for. But this happens all the time now. We've become the entire landscape is polarized now because of social media. We didn't have these problems previously, right? All of us are kind of the same vintage relative to age. And we actually had, you know, university professors that were a little bit balanced where that's not the case anymore. People are so either this side or that side, right? I still remember, you know, Reagan's time when there was actual sort of, okay, let's, you know, reach across the aisle. There's no such thing. It's if the other guys reach across the aisle, you take a machete and cut his hand off because there's no compromise now.
So what's happened in terms of you're now not allowed to have a difference of opinion, you know, without violence, frankly. I mean, if we look at poor Charlie Kirk, and I'm not saying I didn't agree with all his politics. I did feel that he was very much a black and white Bible Belt product, and he didn't, from my perspective, he didn't see the world as a whole. He didn't really probably have the experience with working with lots of different types of people from different backgrounds, color, race, so forth. But at the same time, I enjoy a good debate, and he was a fantastic debater. And I really enjoyed that about him. And for someone to say, oh, I disagree with your opinion, and therefore I'm going to shoot you dead, I'm absolutely gobsmacked that we now live in that kind of world where that's seen as okay. And
only on the left, though, right? The right doesn't do this kind of like crazy violence, right? And historically, I mean, the Nazis were on the left. I mean, what are we talking about here, right? I mean, you know, Bernie Sanders has more in common with Adolf Hitler than Trump does. You know, I mean, what are we discussing here? Modern European socialist democracies are based on the Nazis, right? They were the ones that was the sort of the derivative of Marxism in Western Europe relative to Bolshevism. So, I sometimes wonder, like, when people are like saying to particularly to me, like, oh, you're a Nazi, you're because you're a fascist. Fascist. I'm like, dude, do you even know what you're talking about? Clearly not.
And that word is bandied around so much now. I mean, Jonathan I mean, literally, people think it's okay to call you a fascist if you're conservative. Why is
Since the 1970s in the US, views haven't changed much, but dislike for the other side has a lot.
Right.
So neighbors who before were like, oh, I think this way, I think that way, but they're fine. Now, with exactly the same views, the level of antipathy for each other is much higher.
But why is that come about?
One theory is social media has something to do with it.
Right.
In the U.S., because that's the U.S. I mean, I don't think it's exactly the same in Europe. Europe doesn't seem to have this problem in quite the same way.
Well, I think the UK now is going to that.
But at least in the UK, you've got more than two parties. In the US, you've really only got two.
Right.
So there is us versus them built into the system. And social media, I think, is part of it. I think the fact that in social media, if you have a post which evokes anger versus a pleasant sensation, the anger is favored by Facebook 5 times more highly, or that's the current guess.
Really?
The algorithm, yeah. If you put in a mean emoji face versus a nice emoji face, the current guesstimate is that Facebook will privilege that post 5 times more.
Nick
Jonathan.
Fuentes, for example, right? Nick Fuentes, for example.
Yeah.
He's gone viral like in every post now, right?
Look, I have to say, I think that the academy, universities, are much to blame for this. Universities and university academics in Europe, in the UK, in the US, and certainly in Canada, are overwhelmingly of the left. I mean, 90% plus university academics are left-wing. And it used to be the case that a Western liberal education, what the Romans used to call rhetoric. Rhetoric was the notion that you should have the ability to debate a subject from either point of view, and that this was a formal topic that you could learn,
Yes.
because you couldn't have an effective society unless you could properly examine a question. Those days are gone. You're not allowed to properly examine a question. You are served up an orthodoxy, which you must follow, or you will be excommunicated. I mean, it's as simple as that. And that started with the academy, in my humble view, although I have many academic friends, when I go to Oxford, I visit them, and they argue vociferously, oh, well, academics are generally conservative. And I say, well, show me the evidence. I mean, I think the conservatives are a bit quiet if they are mostly conservative. I think people, many increasingly, and I think we're seeing that in the US, are coming out into the workplace with the notion that there is one set of ideas, that it is self-evidently a superior and correct set of ideas, and that people who do not share it are either malign or dim.
Or fascists.
And Charlie Kirk was malign, so it was fair enough to shoot him, This is a truly scary situation. I was asked to do an address at a new Jesuit school in Penang about 2 years ago. And one of the things I talked about is John Stuart Mill, the 19th century philosopher. He who does not know his opponent's argument knows very little of his own. In other words, it's incumbent upon anyone who wants to claim to be able to analyze an argument to know what the counter-argument is. Well, that's completely gone. That's completely gone from discourse. It's gone from political discourse, as far as I can tell. Yeah. It's gone from the academy, and that.
And it's frightening. It's our youngest minds at university who are okay with that. They don't want to see the two sides. They don't want to understand the argument.
Is that very unfair? I mean, you're of the academy.
No.
Are you not?
I think there's a lot of truth to what you're saying, and unfortunately, I saw it in myself just last week. A colleague of mine, who I think is tremendously bright, holds such incredibly different political views from me. When he shared this over lunch, I must have gasped, and he said, "Are we still friends?" I'm like, "Of course we are," but I was like, "Are you serious?" And then I was shocked at how shocked I was. Like, his views were so annoying to me. And I kind of went home and I thought, okay, I'm going to take this really seriously. And I tried to find balanced debate on the topic. And I actually really struggled.
Yeah.
Eventually, Claude, when I was using Claude AI to try and find something more balanced, said, I have been exhausted, there's nothing left. Or words to that effect. So yes, I think you've got a great point.
I mean, a good illustration, because I'm rather decrepit and I'm rather backward when it comes to the modern world, in automation, is to work with ChatGPT, which I do increasingly. ChatGPT has opinions that overwhelmingly lean to the left.
Yeah.
But if you keep working on it, you can sort of pull it a little bit to the right. But what's
You need to
interesting is
use
how
Grok.
the center of gravity is so clearly to the left, you know.
That's why you always have to look at Grok as well, which is the X. So Elon Musk's one, which is...
But my point is that ChatGPT is not thinking; it's looking at everything out there,
Right.
and its conclusions, its postulations are derived from most of what it's hearing. So what it's doing is saying, "This is what I'm hearing, therefore this must be true." And if you then say, "Well, is that actually the case?"
You're looking at organizations that are more left-leaning, right? So Google, for example, and all these tech bros, right? Majority of them, are left-leaning. So Vivek Ramaswamy was on a podcast a couple of days ago talking about the fact that if you've got an American flag on your Instagram or your Facebook, the AI flags you
As
as a right-wing
Fascist.
sort of fascist or whatever.
Well, it's the same in the UK,
Right.
with people putting up their
Well, I mean, at least in the U.S., we don't jail people.
Getting arrested.
There's 12,000 people that have been put in.
I've never been so
lockup.
I've never been so ashamed. My goodness gracious! I've almost thought about going back to live in the UK and getting back into politics, but I don't really have the energy. I do think things turn to the good eventually, and I think cometh the hour, cometh the man. So we're going to see a very significant reversion to the right in Europe. And if you look at the players, they're already lining up. There is massive disillusionment with institutions, but major countries in Europe, particularly France and Germany, have built a level of institutional rigor and blindness, which is going to make it extremely difficult for them to undergo any major change. The UK, not so much, because the UK has always had that ability. Has always had the ability to take a deep breath and do it in a different way.
The irony of it is that politically correctness comes from the Bolsheviks, right?
Is that right?
So it was like, comrade, you are factually correct, but you're not politically correct.
Well, it's the belief you can change the way people think and behave.
That's right.
By changing the language and the permitted thought.
Correct.
So when the communists first took over in Russia, one of the things they did was they pretty much abolished the criminal investigation departments because their postulation was their belief was that crime would stop in this utopia that they had created. Which is hysterically funny if you think about it, because of course exactly because you couldn't say that there was crime because that would be to defame the obviously superior system under which I lived, So you've got this growing gap between the evidence of the system, which is poverty and persecution, and what you are and are not allowed to say. I just, if I can, before I want to throw this in because I've got terrible memory and I'll forget it if I don't say it. Professor Gad Saad.
I know him. I follow him.
He's a Jewish Lebanese professor now working in Canada, I think.
He's ex-Harvard as well.
Yeah. And he wrote a very interesting book. I do recommend his book. He writes about something called suicidal empathy. Suicidal empathy is where it's so important to you to be seen to be generous to every culture and every opinion that you lean so far into that you end up making decisions that cause your own demise. And so, for example, importing homicidal rapist immigrants who have no investment whatsoever in your culture, or who disproportionately rape young women because their culture perceives that white women are valueless, and
that they have no desire to integrate.
No.
That's the biggest problem.
Well, that's one of the great lies of multiculturalism is that all cultures are essentially equal, and given a chance, which is clearly not the case. I mean, how you can look to me that smacks of a sort of level of parochialism that you can't know much about foreign places if you think all cultures are equal, right?
Yeah.
There's 200 countries in the world, roughly speaking.
But that goes back to the whole narrative thing, right? So you look at every blue city in the U.S., which is essentially a crime-ridden, debt-ridden shithole, and they are doubling down on this over and over again. We had the Somalian sort of fraud.
It's still going on,
Still going on, but you've got the mayor of Boston. I mean, there are not that many Somalis in Boston, who then goes on TV, this Mayor Wu, talks about how, the Somali community is so important to the city of Boston. Again, doubling down on this narrative, right?
So on the left, the political discourse is at odds with what the leaders of the left actually believe. And I offer the following evidence of that. A few years ago, Michelle Obama came to Singapore, and she'd just written a book. And I was in the room with her, with a few other people as well. And Michelle Obama, when she tells her story, it's the story of the daughter of a blue-collar factory worker who was a godly man, who made her go to church, who made her study hard, and who said, if you keep your nose clean and you work hard, you can have anything you want in America. That was essentially what her father said to her, and she then went to, I think, Yale, was it? And then married, the guy that ultimately became president of the United States. But on the stump, what Michelle Obama says, that is when she's electioneering, her message to black people is not, you can have anything you want. This is the land. It's, the odds are stacked against you. There's institutional racism. Without the Democratic Party to correct this, to put a little bit of weight on the scale, you're done for. I mean, that's essentially the lie at the heart of left-wing politics in the US. Therefore, you have to give us money, you have to give us power, and everything will be dandy. And of course, the impact of policies supposedly designed to bring about that equity has been exactly the opposite. It's created massive state dependency. It's created 70% of young black men live in single-parent families, mostly women, which again correlates with massive levels of much elevated levels of crime, propensity, dropping out of school, drug addiction, being imprisoned, suffering from mental illness, all these sorts of things. Suicidal empathy. I feel good about it because it makes me feel good. It makes me feel good that I care so much about people. You have one of the things that Charlie Kirk got into trouble for is for challenging people who kept talking about empathy, because on the left to demonstrate that you care is somehow a value in and of itself. I mean, the view
virtue signaling.
That's
what they call it.
Yeah, the view on the right. The view on the right is that's utterly fatuous. At the end of the day, do you know what I mean? If you actually genuinely care, why aren't you down serving up soup?
Yes.
At the We Care Centre in Bedok, which is that's a Singapore reference. But there are places everywhere in every modern city, in every modern country, and not so modern, where you can go and be of service to people who are struggling. Saying that you really care about them is entirely about saying how great you are, whilst actually not doing anything that's remotely useful, and we have an absolute epidemic of that in the West at the moment. Sorry, it's a bit of a rant.
The EU as well.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got these. I mean, every time Zelensky comes to the EU, they've been losing this war for a year and a half. Like, I've been saying this, but the legacy media machine continues the narrative, right? We keep going back to the narrative, right? The EU is all the hugs and the kiss, kiss, kiss with Zelensky. And when he needed 350 tanks, they hung him out to dry, right? A year and a half ago is when they should have given him the equipment. They didn't do it, right? But they feel good about continuing this narrative that we're helping them fight the Russians and democracy and let's all go to war. And it is performative art, right? Essentially. And you've got, Ursula and all of these people, the entire senior leadership of the EU are failed politicians that got kicked out of their countries. So, and then it's like Citigroup used to be in the 80s, right? The only way to fire somebody was to promote them. And that's what a lot of these politicians are essentially, is they're on a micro political standpoint in their own countries, they were a problem. They were kicked out and then given.
Thomas Sowell talks about this. I mean, and somebody else that's worth following, and he's very old now. But what he says is there's no worse basis for taking political decisions than leaving them in the hands of people who pay no price for being wrong, which is in essence the description of all modern politicians in the West. The difference between politicians in Singapore and Vladimir Putin, and I'm not making any direct comparisons there, is simply that because of longevity, in both cases, they will be around to see the consequences of the policies that they're creating now. And I've repeatedly praised Singapore on the BBC because of that, because they have the ability to make very long-term political determinations over 10 years, over 15 years, and you'll hear it if you listen to what they have to say. Putin is the same thing. He's been around longer than, he's lived to see 5 English prime ministers, 5 American presidents.
Yeah, that's right.
And he's savvy. I'm not. Again, you can't say anything positive about Putin without being. Without being suggested, you're probably on the payroll.
Clearly, invading Ukraine wasn't one of his more intelligent moves.
Yeah. Okay. Well, perhaps we shouldn't go there. I mean, I don't think he had much choice, actually, to be honest.
They got their ass kicked, basically, right, for the first 2 years. So anyway,
is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, look, they still have 20%. Clearly, Ukraine is barely hanging on.
Yeah.
But they thought that they were going to march into Kiev within a week.
I don't really agree with that analysis. Do we really want to go down that rabbit hole? We should do another session on the Ukraine.
Yeah. I was just thinking.
I'm quite fascinated by what you guys are saying, but let's hold back.
Let's bring this back to social media and losing friendships by posting.
I've lost a lot of friendships. I'm the only one that's sticking to the topic.
Well, every time I listen to you, I'm not really surprised.
Hey, I'm an acquired taste, like Jägermeister.
No, I've known you for a long time, so I grit my teeth slightly.
See, Simon, we go back a long way. You love me. You love hanging out with me.
I had a father who was an extremely grumpy, sort of Basil Fawlty figure. I don't know if you will know Basil Fawlty, very right-wing Englishman who purports to be aggressive, but is in reality absolutely terrified of all of the changes that are going on in the world. Black people on the television and women getting educated and all the things that he doesn't really understand. Very lovable and rather sad.
It's a different era, isn't it?
I think that's the other thing. I mean, it's this revisionist. The way you go back and you pick an event from 400 years ago and you say, really, they had no idea, because I with my presentism, and my presentism is the term that's used to describe it.
That's Marxism.
No, which is everything.
A tenet of Marxism. That is one of the Marxists. The Marxists invented that. The revisionists too. The Tsar was a bad guy. Yeah. Urban populations got duped into supporting them, then all ended up in the gulag. The useful idiots. This is exactly what the left uses. I mean, this idea that these guys are socialists is nonsense. I mean, don't waste my time with that bullshit, right? I mean, come on. All of them are commies, right? Essentially, right? Masquerading, whether it's in the EU or the UK or the American Democratic Party or half the governments in Africa. It's the same playbook.
Well, you've got to remember that, for decades after many people knew the horrors of the Soviet Union, there were plenty of academics on the left who were vigorous supporters of the Soviet Union. And that continued really into the early 1960s because the elegance of the idea of Marxism was just very, very seductive to the left-wing mind because of the empathy thing, because it's not fair that some people have more than others. So let's put everything on the table and share it up equally. And wouldn't that be great? Well, no, it wouldn't be great. It would be an absolute catastrophe.
Well, that's why they vilified Hitler and not Stalin, right? The New York Times is famous for that in the 30s, right? So that they sent all their reporters to Moscow, and they all came back saying this is a utopian society. And I think the guy that was the biggest supporter of Stalin actually won a Pulitzer Prize, right? So that's the kind of publication they are actually, right? And it's carried over into today, right? I mean, these guys have been wrong on everything since the Vietnam War, right?
Well, we're probably wrong on everything now because in 50 years there'll be people listening to this and saying, "My God, what a shower!"
Yeah. Well, they're going to say about me is we should have made him president.
Oh, they'll be saying he was right. He was right.
Yeah.
No, being excommunicated by your friends. I mean, I was taught by the Jesuits that you should take the contrary point of view because it makes life more interesting. And so I've always prided myself on doing that. And it makes life much more interesting. But there are some things in the modern age that are so obviously scams, like, the climate catastrophe. When that first appeared and that ridiculous film by Al Gore, which was full of lies. I'm a classicist, Latin, Greek, philosophy. I speak 7 or 8 languages, but mostly they're languages that nobody alive speaks. But at the end of the day, you don't have to have a massive amount of learning to know when you're being lied to. And when the corollary of those lies is that you have to pay a massive amount of money to correct impending catastrophe, you should be able to sniff that something weird is going on. And I got into such trouble. My liberal friends in London. I mean, I had a wonderful friend. She heads an advertising company. She's got triplets, and she took her triplets on some kind of climate demonstration and lectured me for not leaning in. And then she got on an airplane and went on a shopping trip to New York with her mates. I mean, if you believe that carbon dioxide is bringing an end to our planet and civilization as you know it, I mean, it's I'm going to get into trouble for this.
No,
it's a preposterous. Essentially, the invisible gas that's coming out of my nose is going to cause the end of human beings. I mean, that's essentially the proposition,
this
right?
Is exactly. This is the point I was trying to make. About 10 minutes ago, which is the narrative is more important than the facts.
Yeah.
And there's no logic and common sense. You cannot reason with these people.
Well, you can say if you really believe that, maybe you should all hold your breath for the next 3 hours.
No, but that's the little people's problem.
Okay.
Not the guys
that's
flying
quite right.
the private jets.
No, it makes me annoyed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the sea level. I mean, I've been in Singapore 30 years. And Singapore is an island, for those of you who don't know. And I live right by the sea. And I go down to the sea every day. And when I was first here, we had an English expert who was advising the Singapore government how to build dikes in the way that they were built in Canada, because sea level was going to rise to catastrophic levels in about 20 years. Well, I can tell you, sea level has not risen at all, okay? In 30 years, if it's risen at all, it's millimetric. It cannot be seen, okay?
That's right.
And of course, the alarmism keeps changing. Oh, well, it's not going to happen, but it's about to happen. I don't know why I'm getting hot under the collar. It's just annoying, because if you look at the economic ills of Western governments now, and you look at the trillions that have been hijacked by this ridiculous notion that we can somehow change the way that climate works on Earth,
but you can't issue driver's licenses in time. But the governments are going to the DMV is going to fix it all, right? CO2 is the reason why trees grow. Now you've got that Bill Gates, that genius, that's saying that, well, we don't really need trees anymore. Cut them all down or whatever.
You're saying that climate change doesn't exist?
Well, obviously it exists. I mean,
But
14,000
not
years
the
ago, there was
levels.
5 miles of ice above London. The climate's changing all the time. But
not in the way that the impending doom level, right? So CO2 is increasing, which is actually good for
But it's no way
for forestation, actually, right? So we were worried 20 years ago at deforestation. The planet in the last 20 years has never been more green because of high levels of CO2. You actually need CO2. It's actually for agriculture as well. And you've got people in you've got people in the EU that are stopping farming because cow farts or whatever.
Again, let me offer a classical perspective, because if people were to read books, it might help them in this difficult analysis. So in the first century, the Romans were very impressed with the quality of wine grown in northern England. Okay, now there isn't much wine being grown in northern England now, but at the current rate of warming, there probably will be in the next 10 or 20 years. Okay. It's not the end of the world. It's just a cycle, okay? The planet gets warmer, then it gets cooler. It's happened before, it'll happen again. The best explanation is the Milankovitch cycles. I mean, the Serbian astronomer who basically derived about Milankovitch, I think is 10 or 12 different aspects to the relationship between the Earth and the Sun, which explain long and short-term climate effects on Earth really rather well. And that analysis stands up to scrutiny pretty well. So is the climate changing? Yes. I mean, is the water going to go up and down? Yes.
And I'm the one that's getting canceled here, right? He's fine.
Why am I fine?
We just talked about workplace issues, right, with politics.
Oh, I've been
I'm the one that looks like a jerk.
But I've been unemployable for decades. I mean, about 20 years ago, I got fired from Accenture because I told all the partners in a meeting that you're all fucking sociopaths. Oh, sorry. An analysis which I stand by.
But at least you didn't say that Oprah had a haircut like a Cocker Spaniel. See, that's why you were saved and I was in the doghouse.
I found working for America, but already because I worked for Carney before I worked for Accenture, and after that I had to start my own company because nobody would employ me, which is fine. At the end of the day, you speak your mind. You can say what you like. The level of political correctness, I got told off at A.T. Kearney because we were on an away day and we had to do a skit about something or other, and I did a skit and it was perceived to be too lewd, so I was sent.
Was there nudity
Sent to HR. No, I invented this character called Gaston Le Pipe, who was a French chef.
Yeah.
Well, Le Pipe, you know what Le Pipe means in French?
What?
Well, look it up afterwards.
Okay, all right.
Tailler Le Pipe, which is to whittle a pipe. That's
All right.
It's
we get it.
Yeah, okay. So I got into trouble for that. I got hauled up before the beak and given a bit of a talkie to. Why? Okay.
I think Jonathan might have to arrange for a therapy session for you and I after this.
I didn't do it. I
But,
just referred to it.
I can help you with your practice.
Please,
I could run a TDS group therapy session to help people with that.
To help people with what?
TDS.
TDS?
I think
Derangement syndrome.
I think to be able to make
It could be a revenue a separate revenue model for you.
this inability to make jokes that are near the knuckle because of the perception that people can't take it, particularly. And I think it's quite insulting. Particularly women are fragile. I had a business partner a few years ago, a very woke, very clever man. He'd been on TV for a long time and so on and so forth. But we'd be in a room and he'd say, is anyone feeling offended by what Simon is just saying? If you are, you can come to me later. Because I was just being a man. Women aren't fragile. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't
think that's a blanket statement. Some are for sure, but
Western woke women.
You can encourage
fragile.
people to be.
I'm not.
They're offended by
woke,
everything.
You can encourage. Yeah, I mean, women fragile. I mean, it just makes me laugh.
Is
I mean,
Greta Thunberg fragile?
Well, but she's ill. I mean,
she's a fascist.
She doesn't know what she is. Bless her. She's just she's a little bit of a nutcase.
Well, we have to admire at the age of 15, she did bring to the world's attention
she's got
the
handlers.
climate story.
She's got handlers, grifters, the climate grifters behind her, and now these Palestinian grifter types, right? Queers for Palestine or whatever.
Well, I was quite anti-establishment when I was that age, but she's just foolish. She's exploited by all these different things, by climate, by
I did lose any respect I did have for her when I saw her pretending to be handcuffed in the airport this year.
And where's police brutality when you need it?
She was pretending to
be handcuffed, which says a lot, doesn't it, about someone's integrity and creating the media lies. I mean,
I always think the police are rather nice. They are in the UK. I mean, I've been arrested a couple of times as a young man, and they're actually quite sweet,
You've seen the videos, right? The white chicks that are like giving the police a hard time.
You mean Karens?
Karens.
Oh, I don't know if you're allowed to use that term.
No one takes a truncheon out and is
Sorry, you probably wouldn't allow these in your in your therapeutic sessions.
Anything goes there. Anything goes there.
But I mean, being overly sensitive. I mean, it's education should equip people for life. Life is not anodyne. Life is full of difficult situations, and at the end of it, we get ill and we die in every case. Or sometimes it might even be more abrupt, But I don't understand this, I grew up on a farm where it was a very male kind of environment where the men were very earthy. They had very simple values: family, religion. All the women in the early 1960s in the UK wore scarves, headscarves. Which is interesting.
They didn't blow things up, right?
That was a fashion statement rather than
it's culture.
religious.
All I'm saying is it's culture. I'm not suggesting for a second it was religious, but it was culture. And very simple, and they would have been very offended and regarded as idiotic, a lot of the things that are taken as standard today, But, I don't want to be seen to be backward. I mean,
Simon, we were in school, in our day, it was logic and common sense. Right, primarily, the education system was really based around logic and common sense, right?
Well,
where it's now based around a political ideological narrative, which then whether you're in gender studies or in sciences or whatever, it's sort of bled into the indoctrination of, and that's why you get these kids that are nut jobs that are like running around trying to kill Ben Shapiro whenever he's at Stanford or wherever, and this is a symptom of it, And good, you get a lot of clients I think in the future, for sure. But do think about my
Thank you.
my side practice that I
TDS.
can help you with. Yeah. It could be like an intervention kind of thing where they sort of,
I have to be careful about because the Raffles Crew. I started a business network called the Raffles Crew. 4 or 5 people came to the first one, and now I've got about 500 in 5 countries. But I noticed with the younger people, particularly, and I'm 69, so everyone's younger than me. So there was a young lady, very nice, highly educated young lady who was only 5 years out of university in Holland, and she was completely woke. Everything she said was, we got to do this, we got to, women are victims, men are this, men are that. There's just a whole ideology that's being taught in European universities, and I couldn't, if I'd said anything, it would have really upset her. It would really have upset her.
But we're allowed differences of opinion. I have no problem with that. But
yeah, that's right. He's right.
What I don't like was when, you're not allowed to have an opinion.
Because you might offend somebody. That's the whole point. And we have been, I can't tell you over the years.
It's not something that worries you very much.
No, well, it never worried. I've been like this since I was in high school, right? So, I've had this problem, but I always remember being, even in business meetings in which you had to keep quiet and someone would pinch you and just say, let them. And I think that's one of the reasons why people on the right now have had enough. It's like, dude, you know what? We don't want to listen to this crap anymore, right?
Well, the corruption doesn't help, because if you believe that if you're convinced that what you believe is self-evidently morally superior to what everybody else believes, then that justifies almost any means which you deploy for the fulfillment of that ideological strategy. That's how the communists rationalized all the killing they did at the beginning, which is, once we've got everyone killed, then
it'll be all better.
Fine. It'll be utopia after that. Only the killing continued. And that's the same thing,
Ursula would like to do that in the EU, right? With Hungary and Poland, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, we have politicians now who've never done anything in their lives other than be politicians, which is a scary thing.
Always.
Are we going to have a go? Are we going to have a go at the BBC, or are we going to leave them?
It's up to you. I would like to circle back to friendships being destroyed by politics. As recently, I did post something about Trump, and it's purely looking at Trump's policies. And someone I know made the comment, and I actually agree with him, that if you look at pure policy making, Trump is the greatest US president of all time, purely looking at policies.
I completely agree.
Taking out all the, the gaffes.
And the ability to get it done.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a lot of presidents have talked a big game.
And I put that on my Facebook, and one of my best friends now hasn't spoken to me since I posted it in June. Completely cut me off. And I know it was this.
I've got very good friends.
She's a best friend. Yeah. And I've been sending her messages saying, look, whatever I did to offend you, I'm really sorry.
It's not going to work.
No, you should never. It's not. Yeah, he's right. It's not. It's not going to work. B, you shouldn't even waste your time. So she wasn't really a best friend to begin with.
She was.
Trump is very divisive. I mean, I have really good friends.
But how can a comment like that on his policy making destroy a friendship?
Well, because
it's ridiculous.
People believe that he's the Antichrist. He's fundamentally evil. They believe everything that's said about him.
But Simon, this is the other problem is that we have tolerated these people and their bullshit and they're not used to pushback anymore.
With the wheeze, there, Simon.
Right? Me, let's say. But
whatever you're going to suggest,
you're not part of that.
Okay,
I know, because you might get canceled as well. And society in general has tolerated these Karens. Right, and they're male Karens too.
I don't like people using the word Karen all the time either.
What word would you prefer?
I don't think that's fair on anyone who is called Karen.
You're obviously not.
Be a nice name.
I used to date a girl named Karen, and she was a Karen.
You're not watching enough YouTube in that case.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, Jonathan, how do you bring back a friendship after you've fallen out over something political?
I think it's really hard. And I asked Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, a question like that. And he came up with an answer which I found really banal and ineffective, but it was the best answer that I could come up with. When I reflected on it, that he could have come up with, and that was empathy. What is it from their perspective that's going on? So perhaps she views you as someone who is, of evil intent or deluded.
Probably doesn't think I'm dim.
But sort of that she's questioning things about you, that your core values are incompatible with hers, and to sort of appreciate that's, and you may have the same towards her.
But when you're discussing policy making, I don't even think it's.
I mean,
It's
this
about
is somebody that
core
I've known for
values.
more than
I
20
think it's
years.
about
I know her
identity.
children.
And so, like, if I identify as Democrat or Republican or in one way or another, like it gets quickly tied into who I believe I am, the deeper parts of my psychology. And I think there isn't very much that identifies people today. It's in the way that it did in the past, their religion, their state, that a lot of these things are being weakened. So if I then latch onto my identity as someone who holds this political view or that one,
Got a very good point.
then it's deep inside. And if you say that you aren't with me in that, it's as if you're opposing me in a deep level and you are therefore bad. And so she perhaps is seeing you as profoundly dim or profoundly evil. And
But I know,
Jonathan, I'll just interject real. Sorry to interrupt both of you, but it's you just touched on it. It's their religion. This is the reason why the left is
this is a very good
so
point, yeah.
absolutely amazed with radical Islam. They're like, we should be like, we would love to be like this, like just blow people up and just kill them because they
That's
don't.
a bit harsh.
No, but which is true. That's why you've got these morons that attach themselves to radical Islam, because radical Islam, in their mind, is the perfect way to like convince people to do their bidding, right? Essentially, what they don't realize is the Islamists basically will use them and then wipe them out like they did in Iran, right? The Marxists help the Ayatollah get into power, and then these guys are all put in labor camps and shot. But it is their religion. So what you're saying is absolutely correct. That girl, woman, whatever, you have disrespected her religion. Because in her religious doctrine, Trump is, as Simon says, the Antichrist, is the world's worst person, fascist, Hitler, whatever. And you have disrespected, her religion, basically. And that's why she's
I find it very hard to understand, because I'm somebody that always believes people are entitled to have their own opinions. People can be of whatever religion. I have friends of every single religion. I'm really not bothered by it. But for her to take this stance that she's never going to talk to me again over
because
a post
no
on
one
Trump.
has kicked her ass before, and
that's gonna
at a
help.
young age. To try and we were in a very rough and tumble environment in school, right? We didn't have this sort of safe space sort of environment where you've got kids now that lose their minds, and you've seen it on campuses. In your former university, I mean, people have just screaming, and no one did that kind of stuff because you were ostracized. Right, and you were crazy or whatever, right? But now it's normal. And
I think also those people didn't even go to university. They weren't deemed intelligent enough. And when Charlie Kirk died, I watched an interview where they went round a campus saying, "Oh, what do you think of Charlie Kirk being assassinated?" And people were saying, "Well, somebody had to do it," and things like that. And you're like, how can you be deemed intelligent enough to attend university when you come out with a comment like that?
because they're in the
You should
gender
not be
studies
allowed
department. That's
to
why.
study at university. You should be making coffee somewhere.
So
That's what they're all doing now. anyway.
One theory, and G.K. Chesterton, who was the writer of Father Brown, so probably people know him for that,
Yeah,
but he
he's
was also a Catholic theologian and a convert, and he sort of said that the problem with no longer believing in God is not that you will believe in nothing; it's that you will then believe in anything. And this is, of course, a controversial point of view, but if you take the view, as I do as a conservative, that human beings are inherently spiritual and that we inherently seek a spiritual construction for the universe in which we find ourselves, then if you take away our inherited mechanisms, so you say we can't have prayer in school, we can't teach Christianity, we can't teach whatever, then people are going to be looking for absolutes, because that's essentially what we do. And the absolutes that they find on the left. They find slogans, which satisfy some basic need in them. Now, that's not an original thought, and it's indeed been around for 100 years, but I think there's a lot of truth in that. I mean, I noticed, years ago when I hitchhiked across the US in 1978, a perilous trip. I'm amazed that I survived it, but I ended up in San Francisco on a tram, and the Moonies, the Moonies.
That's right.
So in those days there'd be these pretty girls, and they'd come up to you on a tram, and I was 20, and they say, "Oh, you want to come with us? We get to have a." And I thought, "Oh yeah, sure, whatever," because I was, a foolish young man. And off I went to the Moonies' place, where we were given
great vegetarian food and lack of sleep.
No,
Hare Krishnas.
Those are Hare Krishnas.
No, same thing. But what they do,
Moonies is a Christian sect from Korea.
They try and persuade you to get onto a bus to go upstate, where they take you to a farm, which is where they deprive you of sleep and turn you into. But in this particular case, they fed us, and then they gave us this lecture. Now, bear in mind, I'd been educated by the Jesuits by this stage for about 10 years, so the ultimate mind warpers. The extremely clever Catholic priests, who, by the way, were extremely Catholic. All embracing in their views, Catholic with a small c, and. What it was BS, and this guy stood up and said, I remember it to this day, because I was my first year at Oxford. He said, "Have any of you ever really got into a rose?" I thought, who is this dick? And but the American kids who've been also gathered off the bus are all going like that.
But this is a California thing.
Yes, yeah.
That,
Well,
right?
but I mean, the point is,
it doesn't work in Texas.
It was specious nonsense, and it was being lapped up.
Yeah.
I thought it was very funny. I thought it was,
We have a lot of the California is the sort of the mecca of the cults.
Yeah. Well, and so my theory is that we. And the reason I raised my children as Catholics, although it doesn't seem to have taken particularly, is because you need to have something there. Because absent any kind of narrative, faith-based narrative, creation-based, whatever you want to talk, you are going to be susceptible to all sorts of rubbish. And that's where we're living at the moment. We're living in a world where people's heads are full of most ridiculous nonsense.
Now, that's what the Democratic Party is, right? It's a cult. It's a cult of crazy
people. You're a Democrat, aren't you?
We're going slightly off topic here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 2 minutes left, guys. Let's have a last thought on the subject of friendships being destroyed by politics. So let's start with you, Samir. Quick last thought.
She still looked like a Cocker Spaniel. I was unfairly canceled for 3 months because of that.
I was thinking about this in the context. How do we? I'm sorry to keep coming back to the same topic. How do we turn the BBC back from a sort of woke nightmare to somewhere where you can have sensible conversations? And I actually started to write a prescription for this. But part of the beginning of the prescription is we have to teach people that it's okay to have differences of opinion and to learn to have a dialogue where you explore what other people think.
That's no longer the BBC, sadly.
No, it isn't, sadly. But I mean, and the premise of this,
you got to shut it down.
Premise of this, and I got this from Jordan Peterson, who I like a lot, although sadly he's quite ill now. Yeah, he's quite ill. Yeah, was I go into every discussion on the assumption that I'm going to learn something from the person that I'm talking to, however much I think I may disagree with them at the beginning.
Yeah,
and I think that's really good. Yeah,
that's a great piece of advice, Jonathan.
I think empathy is key. That somebody may have a difference of opinion from you, but it doesn't necessarily mean that their core values or humanity isn't present. You can generally assume someone is not deliberately trying to be evil or remarkably stupid, and that can be so hard. But I think when we try and empathize and understand where someone is coming from and experience your shared humanity, the hostility for differences of opinion begins to lessen. And I'd say, when you have a breach like you have with this friend, try and win them over with love and then let go. If you can, great. And if you can't, let go. Sadly.
Okay. Well, thank you, guys. That brings us to the end of this podcast. If you enjoyed it, please like and share it. There's a saying, never discuss politics or religion in polite company, but we disagree with this. And we hope you enjoyed this lively debate today. If you want to suggest a topic for the next episode, please join our Facebook group at Ella Podcasts and message us. And don't let politics divide us. Sending you a big political free hug.